Hello from my office. This is Duncan Taylor here, reporting for the Montreal MG Car Club, and we're in season 2 of the MG Stories. Season 2, episode 2. You'll recall the first one with Gord Clark, and in these COVID conditions, the second interview we're doing is going to be a remote one. And I'm really pleased to be joined by Ross de St.Croix, a long-time member of the Montreal MG Car Club, around it as an inception, and we're going to be talking about Ross's love of MGs and motorsport. Good afternoon, Ross. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Duncan. I'm happy to join you.
Fantastic, fantastic. We're going to launch right in. This is even from the information you've shared so far, Ross, you've had an extremely colourful career, and even if we're just capturing a sliver of it, I think it'll be really interesting to the viewers. So I'm grateful for your time this afternoon.
Right.
So I think why not start at the beginning, Ross? Tell us in a couple of minutes how you got into your love of cars and motorsport in the first place.
Well, I was thinking of this as you asked the question a couple of days ago. My interest was mostly in airplanes. When I was in high school, of course, that was during the war, and there was a lot of activity about what was going on. And but after a while, when automobiles became more prevalent, because I was growing up during the war, there were a shortage of automobiles and so on and so forth. I became enamored with automobiles because there was something that you could see eventually owning one. And so I spent a lot of time with people who own cars, and I worked with them on their cars. And these would be 1932 Pontiacs, 1932 Fords, and things of that nature, which were very prevalent in those days, left over from the war, and became very, very interested in that type of car, or any type of car. I had a neighbor by the name of Al Barlow, who became an owner of an MGTC. And he actually let me drive that car early on in my history, because I had helped him with his 32 Pontiac. And when he got the TC, I became very interested in that car because it was such an interesting and unusual car. Distinctly remember the fact that it had a steering gearbox that required constant attention, so you didn't have to keep going like this to keep the car going straight down the road. Anyways, after that, I ended up buying a car of my own.
Yeah.
And, it was a 1939 Plymouth 4-door sedan with a flathead 6 engine in it. It served me well over many years. And one day I'm driving up in the NDG area of Montreal, and I see this white MG TC sitting on the side of the road. So I looked at that and said, that's a pretty neat car. My friend's car, TC, was black. I looked at this and I said, geez, that's neat. I got out of my car and put a note in the windshield that said, is your car for sale? And I left with my phone number, my home phone number. And a couple of days later, Lloyd Brown calls me, and Lloyd says, no, my car's not for sale. But if you're interested in cars like this, come and join us at the Montreal MG Car Club, right, which is meeting at, I think it was the O'Keefe Brewery on Descartes Boulevard. And if it wasn't, Gordy Clark can correct me.
Okay. Roughly what year was this, Ross?
Eh?
Roughly what year was this?
Yeah, oh, I wouldn't know exactly, but it would be early 50s.
Right. And
the club, if I attended a meeting with full attendance, there'd be 25 of us there. John Hyland was there. I don't remember Gordy Clark was being there, but John Curtin was there, and John Lequier was there, and maybe others who, if I was prompted, I could remember. But that was my first introduction into the MG Car Club.
Right, good to know.
Funnily enough, at that meeting, John Hyland asked if he could ask a question, and that was, he says, are any of you interested in racing MGs? And I don't know why I put my hand up and said yes. He says, ha ha, just kidding. And that was the end of it. So I became an MG Car Club member.
Excellent.
And
how did that evolve into racing then? And I'm just going to share a picture of the start of racing being the winter, the rallies that you're describing, and sharing a picture of the rally with the TD. How did those rallies get started? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, the first activities would be driving skill tests and navigation rallies that the club put on.
Yeah.
And then other clubs in Montreal started up. We were predominantly an English-speaking club, and then some of the French-speaking clubs started up, and they started events, and they would come to our events, we would go to their events. And there was maybe 5 or 6 years, not 5 or 6 years, maybe 3 or 4 years when there was a lot of driving skill tests and navigation rallies, which ended up with my going with my second MGTD to the winter rallies that had started attracting a lot of attention at that time. And I entered 5 international Canadian winter rallies with Dennis Johnson as my navigator. And at the very beginning, I was sponsored in my second MGTD that Cook Toledo Motors would help us with. Like they would put on snow tires if we thought that was a good idea. They would supply us with extra gas tanks and stuff like that, because you had to go long distances between fill-ups.
Yeah.
And I would prepare the car myself at home, and that would be it. So we drive at least twice, I believe it was, in the MGTD for a winter rally, which would start on Friday night in Montreal and end in Toronto on Sunday night. And from
some of the rallies, as I read up on the rallies on some of the early newsletters, they were gigantic. They were like 1,200 miles or something. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, it would be 1,200 miles, and we would drive at average speeds would probably be only 45 to 50 miles an hour, but that would be struggling through snow-covered roads and snow drifts and things of that nature, while you were looking for checkpoints to make your turns and things of that nature. But we would start at 8 o'clock on a Friday night and run around the clock that first tour, and then Saturday night we would get a break.
In February. Amazing.
But we would think nothing of doing that 2 years in a row in an MGTC, a TD,
wow.
which by the way, I would drive to work when I got home from Toronto after driving all night long to get home. Monday morning, I would drive the TD to work.
Excellent. So I'd like to move it on a little here. You went then from the winter rallies into more formal racing, and I'm sharing a picture of the MGA with a checkered flag. Can you talk to that for us? I think there's someone else in the car with you there.
That's the first car that I bought with the idea of racing it, because George Henderson of Cook Toledo Motors asked me, he gave me an offer. He said, you buy the car at my cost and I'll sponsor you to race it. And I'll help you prepare the car. I'll get my mechanics to prepare the car and everything of that nature. He said, which do you want? You want a coupe or do you want a roadster? And I picked the coupe because I figured it might handle differently because of the increase in solidity of the body with the hardtop. And it might have, because I was able to keep up and beat other people in roadsters, because I believe I was the only coupe MG that raced around in the countryside in those days. And the picture that you're showing was, I believe, my first race and my first win. I can't confirm that though, but I could tell if I could determine what tires are on that car.
Okay, good
and
stuff.
Because I can't do that, I can't confirm if that's the race one. But if I want to brag a bit, I'll say that was my first race.
Okay, so it clearly wasn't your first MGA, because I'd like you to talk to a picture that's of a roadster MGA with a lady with a very striking checkered flag outfit, helping sat on the car.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Okay. Well, that would be a picture of us winning a race, probably at St. Eugene, because mechanics didn't travel with us when we went to Harewood, which would be the other airport race that we would race on in those days. That would be a picture of us winning a race at St. Eugene. Married to St.Croix, my wife is the lady with the checkered suit, which became very popular at race events for a number of years. And the mechanic sitting on the other side of the car is Hubert Trumbull. And that was the MG, I believe that was the MG Twin Cam, which, yes, was the other MGA that we raced.
Fantastic. So, and so how long was your racing career? Once you started circuit racing,
Well,
how long
I'm
did
trying to
you
pin down, if somebody could tell me exactly when the first MGA came out, because I probably bought one within the first year, which would be 95, 96. And I retired in the spring of 68.
Right.
So that would be almost, certainly over 10 years, but probably closer to 12.
Okay. So the within that racing career, you went from, I see you went from MGA to MGB, and I can see that you did some racing at Tremblant. So tell me about the picture that we're showing now with, it looks like you're being chased down by another MGB.
Well, that's, to me, is a famous picture for me personally, because the guy that I'm leading, I'm going to use that word, is Al Pease, because Al Pease was a very hot competitor out of Toronto, backed by a British Motor Corporation, and I was backed by Cook Toyota Motors, who was a British Motor Corporation dealer. And when we entered a race together, there was either one of us would win the race. That was almost guaranteed. And there's a rumor around that I never won a race against Al Pease. So I treasure this picture because it shows me at least ahead of Al Pease. Yeah, but that's at the downhill after the first turn at St. Genevieve.
Is that this is at this I think is at Tremblant? Is that right?
That's right. That's well, at Le Circuit, I guess, is the right terminology for that track at that time.
Yeah. Okay, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
We are going to take a break now. And when we come back after the break, we're going to finish off on the racing piece and talk about the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
So stay tuned, and we'll be back after the break. For all your mechanical, restoration and performance enhancements of your classic British car, contact Zaven at the Pit Stop Garage. He's waiting for your call. Okay, welcome back. I'm here with Ross de St.Croix, and this is part two. We've been talking about his racing career, and I think we'll round off the racing career, Ross, by talking about the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame. So you finished your racing career, and then took a break, but then your connection back to motor racing came back with the Hall of Fame thing. So tell us about that. Well,
Having finished my racing career with winning the Canadian Championship and the Susi racing team McLaren 1B, which was Bruce McLaren's second team car for the first Can-Am that was run. That attracted a little bit of attention at that time. And as time went on, the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame was started by Gary Magwood and Lee Abrahamson, because they thought that they were missing a lot of history, but they're not talking about what had gone on in Canada. And it was started by them, and the first event was in 1993. I had gotten wind of the fact that I might be inducted, and I inquired, and they suggested that I show up at the Hall of Fame induction dinner with this very small implication that I might be inducted at that time. And people like George Eaton and people like that were on the on the list, and I had a big enough ego to figure, well, this is easy for me. I'm going to make this trip. I bought 6 tickets, 2 for my wife and I, and my twin boys and their wives, and we went at great expense to the Hall of Fame event to find out that it certainly wasn't my year because I didn't make it at that time. We had a good evening, met a lot of old racing chaps, because don't forget this is '94, and I had quit back in the early '70s, 1968, and I hadn't seen many of these people since then. So the next year they called me up again and said, well, I think you better consider going. I said, well, I'm not so sure. I'm not that interested in what's going on anymore, because I had lost a lot of interest in motorsport at that time. And anyways, about 2 weeks before the event, I got a call from the secretary who said, look, Ross, I think you should give more serious consideration to coming. And I said, no, I don't think so. And then a week later, I got another call and she says, look, I'm serious this time. I think you should really come. So I said, okay, I'll go. And I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, which has been running now continuously since 1993, when it first started.
Right.
And that's how I got into the Hall of Fame. I would like, if I might take a minute though, to say I wasn't put into the Hall of Fame only because I raced MGs or the Lola I raced or the McLaren or whatever I raced over my career. But I had a fantastic time organizing and running various organizations such as the MG Car Club, where I was on the executive for many, many years. And then when we lost our registration as the MG Car Club, we turned around and made it the Montreal Motor Racing Club, because that's what we were doing at the same time. We were the principal organizer of major events in the province of Quebec and in some cases Canada. And all of that activity sort of counted up for points for me to become a member of the Motorsport Hall of Fame. So it was a rounding of activities over a period of maybe 25 years that caused me entry into this organization, which is still active today. Because I also became a member of the board of the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, where I was on the board up until, well, I participated in board activities up until 3 weeks ago, when I sent in my resignation from all activities.
Right.
And that's
sorry for the dumb question, Ross, but does the Hall of Fame location that we can visit?
I'll say again.
Does the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame have a physical location that we can visit?
No, we had, when I was president, we had a Hall of Fame museum, and that was at the Canadian National Exhibition Grounds in Toronto, where they happened to have an empty building. And they came and asked us if we would like to open a museum there. And we said, sure, thank you very much. In fact, it was the first Canadian Hockey Hall of Fame building. And we moved in there and we had, I don't know, 25 cars on display. And we had plaques showing all the members of or inductee members of the Hall of Fame. But as you're probably well aware, museums today are somewhat in difficulty. Not because of COVID, but because people have so much to do. And well before COVID, museums started failing. And if it wasn't for the fact that we got free rent and free freight, free heat and air conditioning at the CNE, we would never have ever made it. We would have been broke within a month or two. So the current board decided it should be a virtual Hall of Fame. And you can go on the web today at cmhf.com and find the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame. All of the inductees are on, and they're constantly improving their website. So
very good.
It's all there. So if you want any history about motorsport activities, it's there, including, well, Jacques Villeneuve and you know, people like Gilles Villeneuve and many others who were very common um, featured people in motorsport industry even today.
Excellent. So as you got through the Hall of Fame, you continued with real life, and then your reconnection came back towards the MG Car Club for the 50th anniversary. So as we start to wind down and get to the end of our session together, Ross,
well,
tell me about 2002.
I'm now thinking, about the 50th anniversary, because we had two events. One was a river cruise out of the Kingston area, where we spent 4 or 5 hours, all MG Car Club members, mostly current members, like members who would have been there for the last 10 years or so, and many of the older members who were still around and able to show up. The other event was one we had down in Knowlton, where we occupied a hotel for the weekend, and we did small, short drive rounds the countryside at the time, and that was the 50th anniversary, I believe. Now, I was just looking this morning at a commemorative book of photographs that I had made, and I'm going to have to go and check to make sure that's the event. But I'm pretty certain it was, because we had formal invitations and everything else. It was a great event. I showed up in my Pantera, a 1972 Pantera, and everybody showed up in MG powered cars, like an Elva that Bob Pockhammer was driving at the time, and a whole bunch of MGAs, MGBs, and I think and TD or a TC or two. And that was a neat event. And we traveled around the countryside. We had formal meetings, and it was a great get together.
And didn't you win? You won a prize with your De Tomaso Pantera, I believe.
Yeah, hate to say it, but they had a little contest at the meeting, and they said, who bought? I forget what the wording was, but anyways, the Pantera was the single outsider of the lot, and won the most interesting car of the event or something. Which I should have been ashamed of.
Well, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So we got to the end of our time together here, Ross. So first of all, I wanted to thank you for your time and sharing some of the stories from your career and early days of the club.
Well, it's funny how today, if you check antique or vintage racing or anything like that, it all seems to have started at 1970 with the Can-Am. Can-Am was very, very popular, and it's remembered by so many people because a lot of those people are still around who went to Can-Am as children. However, there aren't many people around who went to races in 1958, 59, 60, 61, where it all started. And we had a hell of a time going to races, enjoying ourselves, partying afterwards, and driving very basic, ordinary cars. Yeah.
Well, from some of the info that you've shared with me, Ross, and some of the shenanigans you got up to, I'm going to be you being there in 2 years' time for the 70th anniversary of the club, and we'll make sure, even if I have to come down to Ontario and get you myself, we'll need to make sure that you're there and celebrate with us another 20 years.
That'll be fine. Be happy to do that, and look forward to meeting all of you guys from my era who are still alive. Stay that way. I plan on doing it too.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much for your time.
In the meantime, thank you very much for joining me, Ross, and stay tuned for more MG stories.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Was on, house blown, dreaming was long, and time still rolling on, and parties, beat goes what you want.